Hey there, and welcome to the Overcomers Overcoming Podcast. It is great to have you join us. This podcast series features those who have gained victory over a life encounter. With that life experience, we encourage those who are experiencing something that might seem to be insurmountable. We advance and encourage others by passing forward evaluated life experiences. We have 3 objectives in this podcast series. We want to encourage those who are engaged in any type of life encounter by offering to walk with you to help you gain victory over anything that might seem impossible. We want to share our experience to help you. Our second objective is to help you develop a confident resolve that there are multiple options to get past any life obstacle. It's a matter of thinking into the situation. Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If you are facing a dilemma resulting from a previous decision you wish you could reverse, we want to help you think into all of the facts and factors involved in making an informed decision. I'm Ron Cooper, founder of the Cooper Culture. I'm with my wife and business manager, Marty. Together, we are the Cooper Culture Company who is sponsoring this podcast series. Today we feature Lois Letchford, who describes the actions she took with her son, Nicholas, who in the first grade was assessed as being unable to learn, quite honestly, stupid. She took offense to that, and the offense turned into action. That action she took is very heartening as to her learning Nicholas's learning abilities. She adapted to that. 6 months of training with him. He now has earned his PhD from Oxford and is living a very admirable life. What Lois did for him is a huge inspiration to helping others through various aspects of life. What's important is words matter. Marty, what are some takeaways our listeners can gain from this podcast?
This was an amazing podcast. What Lois did for her son, what she learned, and how she is trying to teach other parents how they can help their children with their spatial learning.
This is a podcast that is the beginning of what will be a series that we can all learn from. Let's listen and learn together. Lois, thank you so much for joining us. You have a great life story of having overcome various setbacks, adversities. You learned to adapt to your son's learning style, how your learning style and his came together. I suspect, Lois, a lot of things about your life our listeners need to hear, how you overcome various setbacks. But Lois, thank you for joining us. It's great to have you with us.
I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for having me.
Lois, give our listeners maybe just a little bit of an overview of your life, how you have learned how to overcome setbacks. Are you maybe a naturally determined, true grit? There's nothing going to keep you down? Or just tell our listeners a little bit about that.
That's a very interesting question because I went to school and struggled my way through school. I was an undiagnosed dyslexic and no one helps you. And I think just getting through school comes with sheer survival. And that's the background. And then I married and I had these 3 sons. You send them to school. The first one learns at the speed of light. The second one is the absolute opposite, and he literally fails first grade.
No, very interesting, Lois. You are an acknowledged dyslexic person.
Now I am, but they want you to do the testing to prove it. I don't need to do that, and I'm not going there.
You have tested, but you just deal with your dyslexia. Is that a way to say it?
No, I've never tested, and I would refuse to test for many reasons. And one is sheer embarrassment. I don't want someone to say to me, "You're stupid," because I say that enough to myself. And that's what you grow up with when you don't succeed in school and you're working your absolute hardest. And people then turn around and say, well, if only she did a bit more, if only ... without realizing you're working to your max, exhausted, and still getting poor to average results. Really and truly, it comes down to how we teach.
Wow. What you just said is very, very important. Yes, we don't want to label or stigmatize anybody. I, too, came up at an earlier age where I just assumed I was stupid, incapable of learning. As I look back, I think I know some of these statements made, such as, oh, I thought you knew, which caused me to wonder, how could I have known? And I just don't know. So I just assumed that, well, I'm just stupid. And so what you just said, Lois, is extremely important. Was there a part of your life where you talked yourself into believing you're stupid and that kind of thing, and you had to overcome that?
Did I overcome it? I live with it daily.
Oh, gosh.
You know, I was talking to my sister and something came up and I just said, well, I'm stupid, aren't I? And this is recent, in the last few years. And she said to me, Lois, why do you say that? And it's something that just pops up that has been so ingrained and you've grown with it. It's something you have not dealt with, and it's not good.
You're right there. It's not good. There are subconscious thoughts that can dominate our lives. Is that a little bit of a summary of your son? Can you tell us about your son as relates to you and your learning?
Well, this is the absolute opposite story because, as I said, he failed first grade. In 1994, he failed first grade. He's wetting his pants, he's biting his fingernails, and he's staring into space. He's got no chance of doing anything. Then you test. He's 6.5 years old, and the testing comes back. Well, he can read 10 words. He's got no spatial awareness. He's got a low IQ. Mrs. Letchford, he's just not very smart. You have to accept. Okay, I can't say anything, but thankfully my husband's a professor, and when I told him these results, he said, that's Nicholas. That's a lower bound. He can look like that on any given day. And that gave me a ray of hope. The next year, our family went to England. My husband's a professor and he had study leave. And I asked Nicholas, do you want to learn at school or at home? And when I said school, Nicholas's face, the blood just dropped from it. Boom. You could see it just couldn't go there. And he just went white. And so I taught him at home. And I had prepared for this. And I took a series of books with me called Success for All. And they were an abject failure. It was isolated words, letters and sounds, put the letters and sounds together, create a word, remember it, come back, repeat. And he couldn't do it. My mother-in-law was with me and she said, Lois, put away what is not working and make learning fun. And her words gave me the power to throw out what had failed and start with a blank slate. Well, what can he do? I know he can rhyme words and I know he can see patterns. And with that, I started to write simple poetry. And I read it to him. We found the rhyming words. We looked at the comprehension and then he did the illustrations. There was an immediate change in our classroom from stress to, this is fun. And because I had one success with poetry, I wrote another and another and another, and it went on and on and on and on. And then the double O's come up, as in Cook, look in book. And I thought, that's an interesting one. And I wrote about Captain James Cook, the last of the great explorers. And it was a very simple poem. Captain Cook has a notion, there's a gap in the map in the great big ocean. He took a look without the help of any book, hoping to find a quiet little nook. You know, so it's 4 lines that encapsulates the whole of Cook's life. You know, that he's this experienced sailor searching to complete the mapping of a continent without the help of no one's been there before. Uncharted waters. And this is a discussion I'm having with my son through this very simple poem, as well as looking at the rhyming words. And as we do this, we start looking at maps and different maps. My son says to me, And who came before Captain Cook? Oh, that's easy, Nicholas. That was Christopher Columbus, I say very proudly. And he shoots back, and who came before Columbus? I am floored, because you've got this test that says this child is, dumb, asking this incredible high-level question that does not come from a slow child at all. And hearing that changed my opinion of him. We return to Australia. I send him back to school. I meet the lady who had done the testing. And I said, well, Nicholas has asked this most amazing questions. You know, he's asked, who came before Columbus? She stood there, she put her hands on her hips and she said, well, he's the worst child I've seen in 20 years of teaching. She put me down. She shut me down for a few hours. I go back to school after I've thought about it, and I said to her, you can call him whatever you like, but if he is the worst child you've seen in 20 years of teaching, then don't expect him to learn like everybody else. And what she did was gave me permission to do whatever I like with this kid until he learned to read. And that's what I did. One more bit that really completed this saga was the reading teacher sent Nicholas home with 2 sentences to learn these sight words. Now, sight words are the little abstract words that we all expect everyone just to learn. Am, is, are, was, were, all of those silly little words. And she sent him home with the word saw and gave 2 sentences. I saw a cat climb up a tree and I saw a man rob a bank. I saw a man rob a bank. And Nicholas stood at the door and he read, I saw a cat. And he stopped. And he went back and he read, I was a cat. And he shook his head, no. And then he read, I had a cat, and I asked, and he just stopped, handed me the paper. And it took me a long time, an hour or so to work out what was going on. Nicholas has the concrete meaning of the word saw, meaning to cut. So he read, I saw a cat, and I said, I cut a cat. And you can't do that. So that confused him. The teacher has provided an abstract sentence that is totally irrelevant to the child's life. She has not taken an example from his life and said, what have you seen, to use the word saw. And then we've got the additional problem. She's only given the abstract meaning of the word saw and failed to help the child understand how the written language works. She put a fire in my belly. I went back to the textbooks. I became a reading specialist. And what do they say? The way we teach impacts the way children learn. The decision that my son was dumb is the first thing that the school and the teachers, not the classroom teachers, but the reading teacher went on when he failed to understand the sentence, I saw a cat climb up a tree. Never did she look at her teaching and explore, what do I have to do to teach this child to read? I went on to become a reading specialist, to teach children just like my son who'd failed all reading programs.
Lois, you made a very poignant statement earlier. Make learning fun. And when we can have fun at learning, we adapt to it. And I really admire you and your true grit and determination that no one's going to keep me down. No one is going to make my son Nicholas feel any less than what he is. Every one of us has strengths, a learning style. It's just a matter of adapting to it. When we do, everything, in my opinion, is unlimited.
Oh, it is. Totally agree. And I get a little bit distressed, I think is the word, at the level of privilege our family had to achieve to get to that point. If we had stayed in the school system, the reading teacher in particular, and the school diagnostician would have continued on with their same pattern of learning and continued to say this child is not very smart. And that's the part that makes me say, if a child is in my presence, they are the future rocket scientists, just like my son, and capable of everything. Up to me to teach them.
For our listeners, how old is Nicholas?
33, with a PhD in applied mathematics from Oxford University.
Oh my gosh. Congratulations to both of you.
There's a video clip for my book trailer that is worth seeing because it takes you on that journey, and it's visual and it's really quite moving.
Is the video clip on the website? We want to make sure our listeners know how to see that.
It's on the website and on YouTube. So if you video Lois Letchford Reversed a Memoir, it'll come up.
Now that's your book,
My
right?
book is titled, yes, Reversed a Memoir is my book that tells the details, the story of Nick.
Once Nicholas learned, learning can be fun, or let's say once he internalized that, maybe that's the term, did you and he just right away pick up on a new path to learning kind of thing, or was it a multi-year transition to that?
Oh, that's a fascinating question. Oh, with not an easy answer. He went back to school and he certainly learned in the classroom. But, you know, I don't know how to answer that really. He was slower at learning all the way through, really until about 8th grade. He put in more effort in learning to read, and we had a wider range of options. We did a lot of listening to audiobooks. Put a lot of work in. He put in a huge amount of work.
Is there a general statement? Do you feel our public schools are failing our students? And I'm asking for your opinion. Not everyone will agree with whatever it is, but my observation is, to a degree, teachers maybe necessarily have to teach down the middle, so to speak. If you have 25 or so students in the class, a teacher could say, well, I can't adapt to everyone's lifestyle. I have to teach down the middle, and I hope you get it, but if you don't, we'll graduate you anyway, or we'll advance you anyway.
That's a multifaceted question. The first problem I have with education is the standardized testing that has focused on one right answer. The second is that in schools, what's the ultimate goal? I got 100. Oh, aren't we so proud of the child on the honor roll? I have conformed to the teacher's expectation, and I have achieved 100. In fact, getting 100 is a failing. The testing has not challenged you. It's not made you think, and we're satisfied. We have satisfied that child. We've topped out their curiosity. We've limited their curiosity. We've limited their ability to think.
I absolutely resonate with what you just said. We limit their ability to think. Now, I'm curious, you homeschooled Nicholas, and then he transitioned to Oxford and other schools. Did the teachers, professors, necessarily adapt to him? Did he better adapt to himself, or all of the above?
Okay, let's get this right. I homeschooled Nicholas for 6 months. That 6 months changed his life and really switched on his learning for life. He went back into the classroom, and from there he learned. But, you know, the interesting part of my book is, as I say, my husband's a professor. In 1999, our family moved from Brisbane, Australia to Lubbock, Texas. And in Lubbock, Texas, he went from the bottom of the class to the top. And it was because we lived in Lubbock that he achieved that goal. In my book, I identify 9 factors that made a difference that were not available in Brisbane, Australia. So again, it goes back to privilege. It goes back to our mindset, how we see these children, and then you have to ask what made him succeed in Lubbock. But that goes on. And then you ask the questions about how he got in Oxford. Oxford was really, really tough, incredibly challenging for him. The professors did not adapt to him, and he did not adapt to them. And we worked out eventually that Nicholas's label, acceptable label, is 2nd percentile speech language impaired, which means he can have the fantastic thoughts up here, but getting from the thoughts to the mouth is slower than normal. And people in Oxford don't cope with that really. But in the end, he got through it. He got the support he needed. He had no extra time, but he had additional support helping him with writing, and getting through what they call at the end, the really tough oral exam. They set him up for life.
You know of someone, anyone who has been assessed as or otherwise been labeled as having a learning disability or any form of inability to learn? Perhaps that's you. Possibly you've been told, or you have been the subject of words that made you feel that, well, I should have known, but I don't know why I didn't know. But you took that to mean something other than what it is, meaning we all have a learning style. It is a matter of those who choose to learn our learning style, adapt to that. Many of us have the capability to learn, but it is a matter of us knowing our learning styles and then we adapting to those who have a learning style and adapting to that. Many people can learn. It is simply a matter of adapting to them so they can process information in a way that is understandable and helpful. I want to encourage you, if you feel that you've been shorted just because of any feelings you have or any diagnosis, I want to encourage you to reach out to those who love you and care about you. You matter. I'm fascinated with the fact that you homeschooled Nicholas only for 6 months. With that, you helped develop his mindset. You adapted to his learning style, which I am trying to read into this, Lois. You significantly increased his confidence. Is that a part, or am I thinking the wrong way?
I can tell you something. I spoke to Nicholas about his early learning after he'd finished his PhD. And I said to him, Nicholas, I know nothing about first grade. Can you tell me what happened in grade 1? My son cried. He's articulate. He's confident. And his tongue went round and round in his mouth, and he couldn't say a word. And that's for the first time I'm recognizing my son was traumatized from what occurred in grade 1. And then I knew I couldn't deal with that. So I said to him, Nicholas, tell me what happened when you and I learned together. And this kid changed, and he's laughing. And he said, I remember the poems you wrote to me at the beginning, Windmill on a Hill, Mug of a Bug, and Jack and Jill. And he recited these poems 25 years later. That's when I realized the power of emotion. And then he said the mapping taught me to love learning, and I never want to stop learning. Then he giggled, and it was a 7-year-old giggle. And he said, you wrote a poem about a witch's spell. I said, yes, I did. It was a silly poem. And he said, but I wrote the ingredients to the witch's spell. And here he is, 25 years later, roaring with laughter over the ingredients he had written as a 7-year-old. That's when I recognized the power of emotions and learning, and the two connect, and it changes the life of the child. And yet when we talk about literacy, or we talk about letters and sounds, we forget about emotions. But emotions are critical for learning. And that 6 months set Nicholas up on a path for lifelong learning.
Very interesting you would say that. You were, in your write-up, you were 39 years old when you, it seems, pieced everything together. In hindsight, for the mom, dad, the grandparent, who may have their own Nicholas, as you think back to his first grade and what he described as being traumatized, is there anything, Lois, you could pass on to our listeners to say, look for maybe these indicators for trauma? And then, if yes to that, how would you recommend overcoming trauma, or is it a matter of adapting to and just help make learning fun?
You asked too many questions in one go.
and that's one of my idiosyncrasies, but let's take one at a time. As you think back on Nicholas's life, and his statement that in first grade I was traumatized. As you think back to that, are there indicators that you can now see that maybe you didn't see then that maybe would help our listeners be on the lookout for, and you fill in the blank there, and that may help you determine the person you're working with is traumatized?
Nicholas was terrified of going to school in first grade. And after day 6, the teacher said to me, well, he's so far behind, I don't know how I'm going to help him. On day 6 of school, I should have removed my son from that school situation. The trauma that children are focused or achieve or face in school lives with them for life. Remove the child from the trauma situation instantly. Notice if the child is crying or afraid, can't do the work. Let's take the child out. It is not the fault of the child. We have to remove them from that situation and rethink how we're going to do this now.
That might be a very bold move on some people's part, but that's very, very important that if you are hearing words such as my child is, and anything after that that lets you know my child is falling short of, you're not saying things to build my son's or daughter's self-esteem, that may be time right there to, let's say, take a life pause. We need to make a decision whether to keep them where he or she is.
There's so much to talk about with what you have just said. People or parents will say to me, well, I'm not in a position to remove my child from school. We're both working. You're right. You're not in a position, but your child cannot come home from school in tears every day without repercussions for their life. And I said to Nicholas, I wish I had removed you from school in grade 1. I didn't even think it was a possibility. And I had a younger child at home, and there were complications reason I didn't do it. And he said, I wish you had done too. Because of my son's learning, I've done a podcast titled When Learning is Trauma. And the people I have spoken to who are adults crying over what happened as children is just staggering. Because what often happens is the children are failing in school, and then the parents come home and, they're in more trouble at home because they haven't conformed in school. So we're giving them trauma at school and trauma at home. We're compounding the situation, not easing our children out of it. What can we do? Get the child to write things down or talk about it. Shift it from a memory into language. That's the key thing to do.
Lois, what you've just said is very important, and I want to ask you if you would consider additional episodes, because some of our parents are at a very, very difficult decision point. They resonate with what you say, but any number of things I don't have the money for, I don't feel I have the skills for, any number of things. I don't know anything other than the public school system, and some of those public school systems long-term are failing our students. We might need to make adjustments in our life to have a long-term view of our children.
I'd love to, because there's so much to be said we can do.
Lois, thank you so much. Let's continue this dialogue in another episode, and I suspect we can make 4 or 5 episodes out of this because you have a lot our listeners need to learn from. Thank you for sharing just a part of your life experience. A lot more to come.
Thank you. Thank you, Ron and Marty. Delighted to be here.
The way we process and internalize information we read, things said to or about us, what we choose to believe has a great impact on our mindset, our motivation to move forward. Our lives are largely defined by the way we respond to setbacks, adversity, the fact that we experience those setbacks or other adversities in our life do not define us. Many of us would say, I feel as if I spend more time getting up than the amount of time I am up. And it is a way that we respond to various stimuli. Lois has a great story of how she responded to statements about her, Nicholas, and her response to that. She had a very positive outlook that she is going to overcome any labels, any stigma attached to, and she did, and she still does understand Nicholas. By understanding him and being able to be a very positive impact in his life, she has been able to determine and is helping others determine what she categorizes as learning being fun. Learning being how to read. Some people process information a little bit different than others. It is a matter of us understanding and adapting to those. And when we do, we're able to become the very best. We're able to perform at the very best potential God has designed us to be. It's very important for each of us to understand that words matter. There are many times we make statements that seem to be innocent, but dependent on a person's disposition, their perspective, they can process those words in ways that we didn't necessarily intend. We don't necessarily mean any long-term denigration to that person, but sometimes those words spoken to those people do have a long-term adverse impact. I want to encourage each of us to reach out to those who may think lesser about themselves, may be down because of things said to or about them. Coaching is a discipline that can help people overcome anything of the past that is keeping them from performing at their God-designed potential. Marty and I are certified life performance coaches through the Maxwell Leadership Certified Team. If there's anything that you feel might be keeping you from performing at your full potential, it might be because of something said to or about you. It may be some trauma of the past. Coaching many times can help people overcome that. Contact us at ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, M-A-R-T-Y, at thecooperculture.com. Schedule a 30-minute complimentary coaching session during which we can each determine if we can help you be the very best that God designed you to be. We hope we can warrant a 5-star rating with this podcast. We hope you will want to subscribe. We hope you'll also want to share this podcast with your Facebook friends, your LinkedIn connections, your Twitter and Instagram communities. The more we share, the more we engage, the more we learn from each other, the greater the opportunity we can learn how to best work with others to help them perform at their greatest, highest potential. And when we are helping people to do just that, we're helping people to advance to their greatest potential. Let's work together. Let's share. We look forward to working with you.